Good afternoon. This is Chandra Easton here from Living in Light. I'm an esoteric astrologer, and I wanted to speak to you this afternoon about the movement of the Sun into Capricorn. And I'm focusing on a southern hemisphere. This is referred to as the Capricorn Ingress. When the Sun moves into Capricorn, we think of it as the summer solstice, or in the northern hemisphere, it would be the winter solstice. And here in Australia, this has been the 22nd of December 2021, 3 o'clock in the morning, Australian Eastern Daylight Time. And what happens with this chart is that the Ingress chart, it paints a picture for the astrological themes that are there for the next 3 months. And so I think I'll show you the chart and have a bit of a chat to you about what I notice in the chart. Okay, so what we have here is the Sun, and you can see the circle with the dot in the middle of it, entering into 0 degrees Capricorn. But you can notice also that there are a lot of planets in Capricorn, the Sun and Vulcan and Mercury and Pluto and Venus. Now, every year, the week before Christmas, the Sun enters into Capricorn, and esoterically we say we've entered the period of the Holy Festival, with an opportunity for spiritual awakening and for spiritual progress for all of humanity. Okay, and if we take that opportunity over the next 3 months, then life will change. However, on the other side of the circle from the sign of Capricorn, you find the sign of Cancer, sign of the mother, but also the sign of the herd, the sign of the living in the where the unconscious self is dominating and running the show. Whereas what happens when we're functioning from the sign of Capricorn at a high turn of the spiral is that the soul begins to have a look in and have more and more say. And now one of the things about this chart that I find a little concerning is the moon sitting very high in the chart in the 27th degree of Cancer, right on top of the midheaven, which is 28 degrees of Cancer. The reason I find this concerning is because the sign of Cancer is referred to as the sign of occult blindness. Think about it a bit like a game of snakes and ladders, you know, and if you get to the snake, you can go all the way back to where you started from and you have to start all over again. So the potential of sliding onto the path of occult blindness for the Australian nation, this has been cast for Canberra in Australia, it's dangerous over this next 3 months. Now, why would we voluntarily go backwards in a retrograde motion? Well, different reasons, but and of course it's a choice for everybody, and it's a choice that we will face. So let me just talk a little bit about the other things that I see associated with the moon. The moon is in a pattern referred to as a yod, which is the yellow line that goes down to the Sun and the yellow line that goes down to Jupiter. And there's a green line connecting Jupiter and the Sun. Now, a yod is an opportunity to synthesize and to bring together divergent points of view. You could say there are divergent views on a political level. There are divergent views within the society, the Australian society. And we have the opportunity over the next 3 months to walk in someone else's shoes, look through the window of someone else's life, to not be so dogmatic or hard and fast about this one way right and one way wrong. And if we're able to do that, then we would reconcile the issue of Jupiter in Aquarius, the lowest vibration of Jupiter in Aquarius, which is that we put all our faith in numbers and facts and logic without the big picture or the synergistic understanding of the spiritual world and how it has an interplay. Now, if we're able to suspend some of our judgments and look beyond facts and numbers and pure logic to open to the heart, then we have an opportunity to recognise that the Australian society have a potential door to move forward away from blindness. Yeah, and occult blindness means that we're living in the material world and we don't know, or we have forgotten, or we are too afraid to enter into the spiritual world. Now, this theme of occult blindness is strong in the chart, and I'll point it out to you in a couple of other places. Here we have the planet Neptune associated with the awakening of compassion, and all matters to do with spiritual. But you'll notice that there are no coloured lines. None of the other planets in the chart are talking to Neptune. It's sitting in splendid isolation, unaspected, we would say, which to my mind indicates that the occult blindness can potentially freeze us. And of course, if a person's blind to the inner life, then we navigate and function and try and move our way forward according to external circumstances. But that's only half the picture. Now, interestingly, Neptune at this highest vibration is compassion and love and forgiveness. It's sitting in the part of the circle, the fifth house, to do with love and forgiveness. But Neptune in its lowest vibration is viruses. It's invisible viruses. So it seems to me that Neptune there is asking us to find a way forward through love, where we walk in another person's shoes and try and find a middle ground. Other things in the chart that indicate to me that the Australian nation are potentially blind to what's right in front of us, or worst case scenario, the blind's leading the blind because the moon's sitting here in the government. So the government may well choose a path that takes us backwards to safety because of blindness or because of fear. Yeah? And if we were to have an election, and I don't know if we will in the next 3 months, then it's quite likely that the status quo would remain the same, because there's a tendency to stay in safety when the moon sits very high. Now, the planet Uranus, that is the opposite of choosing safety and is about the courage of the heart and courage to change, is sitting in a blind position. It's sitting in just beneath the descendant. Now, what happens when Uranus sits there is that, generally speaking, the opportunity for us to change has been offered and offered and offered to us, and we've failed to pick it up. And so then change or disruptive antisocial behaviour seems to happen to us. So I think what Uranus is telling us is have the courage to change our values, change our attitudes, change our belief systems, find the middle path of compassion, change the way we use money, or change around health and money and relationships will happen in a very disruptive way towards us. I do find it hopeful with the blue lines, the trines going from Uranus across to Vulcan and Mercury, that there is a significant sector of the Australian nation who are leading and demonstrating and mentoring change and mentoring a better use of resources, or mentoring courage to do with the willingness to look at the old paradigm and throw out what's not working. Okay, other things in the chart that I might talk to you about that strike my attention is this 13.5 degrees of Scorpio sitting on the ascendant, the door to the ascendant. So Scorpio is a sign of transformation. So this really lets us know that the Australian nation over the next 3 months will be going through a period of transformation. And the biggest thing that we need to transform as a group and individually is fear. And that's because there's degrees, 13 to 16, of Scorpio are the degrees of fear. And so you could say the biggest obstacle is fear. My fear of you, your fear of me, fear of the unknown, fear of death, fear of change, fear of loss of livelihood, fear of resources or money or security evaporating, fear. If we give in to that fear and base decisions about the kind of society we want to live in, because we're afraid, then we are taking 10 steps back. We may as well slide back 100 years or further. Okay. Yes, so take some time to examine what it is that you're afraid of and reach deep within yourself to find a way of bringing that fear into some balance or some perspective. If we don't do this, then the danger is that we will unleash Mars. And I'm talking about unleashing Mars because Mars is a very strong connection to Scorpio, and it's sitting on the past life point in the sign of Sagittarius. There's lots I could say about that, but I suppose in a nutshell, my take on it would be that we have a a xenophobic past. We used to have a White Australia policy. We used to have a policy of locking up and incarcerating our First Nations people. We have a tendency to be aggressive to those that we would consider different to us, the other. So whoever the other are, now in previous times we've said, well, you know, is it our Aboriginal people we're afraid of? Is it people with brown skin? Is it the people from Asia? But now, unfortunately, here in 2021, there's a lot of fear and xenophobic sort of keeping the other, people from other states, people with a different medical history. And my suggestion with this virulent Mars here is to refuse to play the game of us and them. Simply refuse to step into the shadow of making us safe and them dangerous, whoever us and them are. Okay, the chart's asking us to head towards the north node of Gemini, and this requires that we bridge the gap between the heart and the mind. Yep. In order to get there, we need to work with the planet Venus. Venus is sitting in a retrograde motion, conjunct Pluto, buried at the bottom of the chart. So our ethics and our principles and our high leadership that's based on integrity and uprightness of the heart is missing in action. It's buried in the chart. It's at the bottom of the chart. So I sincerely hope that we have ethical principles, maybe female leadership that comes to the fore. And when I look at this, I think of parties like the Health Australia Party, who've been standing up for holistic, balanced approach to the world that we're living in. You may know of other ethical, principled politicians who are able to speak with a voice of reason that's not judgmental, that does not discriminate, that will lead us out of this path of occult blindness. This chart is crying out for ethical, principled leadership from the heart. In order for that Venus to rise, it needs to, we need to clear the decks of the old paradigm, the old way our governments run the old patriarchal power in the hands of a few, mainly men, who've run this country. And yes, we have more women in power than we've ever had before, but is it enough? Is it 50%? Certainly not. So something about the old system of government and governance and control and power and the old structure of the society needs to crumble. And we can see things are crumbling. There's a lot of crumbling going on, and this will continue over the next 3 months. Because there are 5 planets in Capricorn and the planet Saturn rules the sign of Capricorn, we must look at Saturn in the chart. Saturn's the resistance, the difficulties, the challenges, and it's in Aquarius, terrified through fear. There's the fear degree. So it's afraid to go forwards, and it's afraid to go forwards to Uranus. It's afraid of all kinds of things. We may be afraid of our own shadow at the moment. We may be manifesting negative scenarios. The more we think about them, the bigger and the worse and the more contagious and the more terrifying they become, to the point that we retreat. So Saturn's in retreat in the house of the home, effectively locked down and locked out. And I look at that and I say, well, almost inevitably between now and the 3rd week of March, there will be more lockdowns and people being locked out. But not everybody will comply with that. And we know this because of the square to Uranus. So there are those who will take to their home, and many people will take to their home out of a balanced approach because it's the safest, harmonious place to be. But other people will do it out of fear. Yeah? What's required is change. Now, Uranus is sitting over here in a strong position to do with health. And I look at the discussions that are going on about health at the moment, and I wonder what's happened to the natural health and what's happened to the holistic health and what's happened to diet and what's happened to exercise and what's happened to the boosting one's immune system. because to me that's the best way of working with Uranus there. I would rather work with the holistic health of the society and of the individuals and of the relationships rather than fear the mob. Because the worst case scenario of Uranus here is ugly mob mentality. And the best case of Uranus sitting there is that we embrace the holistic view of our society's sick. How do we change it on a holistic view? It seems to me that we need to pop the balloon of occult blindness that's sitting here in the 27th degree of Cancer and find our way back to spirit. Once we can engage spirit of the heart, let's call it goodwill, in the conversations with people we disagree with our neighbours, with people from other states, with people from different philosophical, political, medical stance than us. Let's find the goodwill. Let's find forgiveness. Let's find compassion. Let's invite the Neptune into the spirit of the Australian people. And if we're able to do this, then we won't be immobilised and neutralised into a shut down, locked away, isolated, dysfunctional society. So we have choice and power. Of course, any chart doesn't have the free will in it. It doesn't. What I mean to say here is that we can't look at this chart and go X, Y, and Z will definitely happen, because we have free will. And the Australian people hopefully will exercise their free will and say no to fear and yes to holistic, healthy change, and yes to inclusiveness, and yes to new ethical, principled, feminine leadership, and yes to balancing the bridge between the mind, the rational mind, and the higher mind. You have to say yes, yes, yes to all of those things to invite and open the door, because we have a door, and that's the yod. Yeah, we have the potential for a door for change. And in fact, there are two yods. Excuse me, the other yod goes from the past life point and Mars up to the Earth and back down to Pluto. So it reminds me, these double yods kind of remind me of those movies where they have the revolving door, you know, and if I go in this door, I go forward to the spiritual path, and if I go in that door, I go backwards down the snake back to a retrograde society. Anyway, that's my take on this Ingress chart. I'll leave that with you to contemplate. As I said, this has been Chandra here from Star Astrology Healing, Living in Light. And connect with me through my website, through my YouTube channel, through my Facebook page, Living in Light. That's all. Bye for now.